YouTube, happy Saturday and welcome back to my channel. I'm Robin McClendon and here we're working on regulating our nervous system through spiritual, creative, and Zen practices. And this year we've been working on the pause. We've been on our pause journey and working on our pause journals. So if you new to the channel, just stumbled upon something about the title brought you in, please stick around for a little bit and join us. And for those of you who have been on this journey with me, welcome back. So we're at pause 32. And pause 32 is the alchemy of materials. Now, you guys know for the most part, we're creatives here. We're doing our art, journaling, mixed media. Also, many of us are on the path of art healing, through the joy and passion of just creating in our studios, and not so much worried about so much what we're creating, but just the act of creating. That fuels and just helps to regulate the nervous system in so many ways. I don't even think we really think about it, And I know my journey of last year, many of you guys know when I sort of went through my dark night of the soul, it really had me thinking about how my art was helping and healing me, especially after I did the workshop in the desert with many of the ladies that came, and we just were healed by the mother, the energy of that desert. And we were all dealing with losses of some sort, and just how that coming together, recognizing it, and then also doing the art, doing some of the processing was so healing, that I think it's coming to our minds more and more. And any creative, you might have stumbled across this channel and you're not an artist, but you're a creative. We're all creatives of some sort. You may enjoy your time in the kitchen, gardening, maybe you're a musician or a dancer, or you do yoga, you're into wellness. All of these things are creative pursuits because it challenges the right brain. So the right brain is the creative, the left brain is, the analyzer. And in order for us to be healthy with both hemispheres of the brain and within our neurological systems in our body, both sides of the brain, need to be engaged. So there's not like a better side or a right or a wrong. It's engaging all of it. And I think that we're definitely living in a world where we're very heavy on the analyzing side, but not so much on the creative side. And I think the creative side sort of happens by accident a lot of times, or you may be doing something that actually is creative, but you don't associate it that way. So you're not really probably giving that energy or maybe giving that support to the right side of the brain for it to be recognized, within your entire system. So I like to say that because I think when we say the word creative, we think art, and then we think painting or drawing, and then we think, well, I don't do any of that. That's not me. But the word to create, the idea to create, the word creative is very expansive, and it includes so many things. So this week's pause, as I said, 32, it's the alchemy of materials. Now, what had me on that is that I was actually going through my studio this week, and I was cleaning up papers. I was really going through some of my older papers that I have stuck that, stashed away, because I stashed things in bundles, and I was looking for new inspiration because a lot of the stuff I had on my desk and on my tables, I've been working it for a few weeks. And so what I like to do is go through papers I haven't used for a while, maybe old stained bundles that I hadn't unbundled yet, and I look for fresh inspiration. And as I was doing that, I was coming across all type of papers, right? Textured papers, handmade papers I had made, stained papers, fabrics, found materials, found objects. We love that kind of stuff. From leaves to feathers to just stray ephemera that I've picked up on walks and what have you. And so I really thought about how the materials in themselves have alchemy. Like, they actually speak to the stories that we're telling. It speaks to the way we're creating. So for instance, when we're fixing meals, and we're in our kitchens, creating, our next dishes, we don't think anything about all the various spices we may have, the ones we love to use, the ones we don't care for too much, the ones that suit our palates or not. But that's the alchemy of materials, and the alchemy of various flavors coming together, right, to create a completely different flavor than each of those would do individually. We don't think about how that alchemy is occurring necessarily, but it is. Well, the same thing is true in any of the materials that we use in our creative pursuits. When certain stained papers come together with my intuitive scripting, the Sumi ink, and maybe an ink blot, like this whole other story is told than if those materials were swapped out, right? So they have this alchemy of these things coming together. And I think when we look at art and we look at the things that other people create, or we taste the things that other people create, or we watch how other people are putting their gardens together, or the things they choose to grow together, it can be something that gives us pause. It makes us think, maybe I should try that next time. Or I wonder why I'm not using that myself, that kind of thing. And it's like alchemy is all about, it's almost like alchemy is also synergistic. It's like it's greater than the sum of its parts, right? It has that ability to become much larger or broader than the individual elements themselves. And with all of that sorting in my studio and looking for new materials to work with, I came across a really mixed bag of pieces that I wanted to use in this week's journal. So the journal pages that I'm working on in this journal, like they are, the elements are all over the place. And even myself, I was wondering, how am I going to alchemize these? How am I going to bring these together? And I was surprised at how well everything came together and how happy I was at the end of that collage process, just allowing all these sort of different, odd pieces to sort of lay out in front of me, and then allow them to start speaking to me and taking them and putting them different places and just fitting them together almost like a jigsaw puzzle. As I was doing that, it reminded me of a course that I took a couple of years ago at Oxford University. They have online courses, and I enjoy taking those courses on topics that I'm just curious about, and they really feed my soul. So this particular course was on medieval materials. So the things that artisans used during the medieval period to create objects. They weren't always just the art. They could have been goblets, reliquaries, garments, just even in architecture, even in the creating of the churches, the temples, the mosques, that kind of thing. There were various, just a variety of materials used. Well, what was interesting, what the point of this course was to really ask ourselves and to really look at what the materials told about not only the artisan, but the patron who may have commissioned that particular object or art or piece of architecture to be built. What was it saying about those individuals? And so when you have, of course, higher end materials, you're really speaking to a patron who, had a lot of money, was able to, have gold goblets with pearls and emeralds and, diamonds and everything encrusted in it. Then you had a lot of time the art that could have been created by a patron, but it was created for the everyday common person. And so those materials would definitely be different, because they'd be materials that it was perceived that the public, the common public would be able to identify with and be able to take the greater message back with them, because you have to remember that during those times you had you didn't have the news, you didn't have the radio, you didn't have any of that. And so the messages were gotten out into the public through art, through statues, through actually puppets, large, sort of large puppets that were created that could go through the crowd in parades that were larger than life, so people could see them from far back. And so what were those objects made from, versus maybe objects that were in a church or in a temple, that were maybe closer to the priest, that the wealthy who could have a private audience with the priest would see. And so those objects may be more velvets and more brocades and things that are a little bit more opulent. So this is a tradition, with not only within art, but within the world. The type of materials that are used for, I don't know why my nose is itching, so sorry if I keep on doing this, but it's like, feels like it's something there, but it isn't. Anyway, it's, it's something to really think about. And I think it's powerful. From doing that studies, it really had me thinking even more deeply about the power of materials, not just symbols, not just styles or techniques, not just philosophies, but the actual materials. They tell so much about what we're creating. And I know we've talked about it, like in Art Provera, where we talked about, throwaway materials are very common, like concrete, and the everyday person type of materials were used to create art. Or we think about ready-made art, like with Marcel Duchamp, using things that he found to create these sculptures, and what that said about, us discarding materials. But even in our own work, in our own lives, what type of materials are we surrounding ourselves around? Even in our home, what type of materials do we decorate with? Do we have a tendency towards more disposable things, or do we invest in things that we know we're going to keep even a lifetime? And then, of course, what is that saying about the choices we make and the things that surround us with, that actually stabilize these bodies, right? That cause us to be able to be balanced and regulated in our neurological systems. Are we surrounding ourselves with things that are comfortable, that are tactile, that make us feel comfortable and cozy? Or do we keep on putting off until the right day, the right situation, the right home, the right time to do this? And I think that says a lot about how we can make some different choices, even about regulating our neurological systems. I think these things are really important, and maybe to have less of things, to be able to have more of what it is that really, makes us comfortable, makes us happy. And so the same is true in our art. What, a lot of times we can say, oh, that supply is too expensive. A lot of times they are, but maybe it's like picking and choosing. You know what? I'll get some of these things from the thrift store. I'll go low end on some of these, but this one paint, this one ink, I'm going to go ahead and spend the money on it, because I can see where it's going to make a difference in the overall way my art will look, right? So it's the same thing as in fashion, this idea of high low. You can get something high end and you can put it with low end, and it just blends together beautifully. I think there's an opportunity to do that in art as well, because I know when I go to museums, when I view other artists' work at galleries, I can tell when the materials are all sort of low end materials, or when everything is really high end, or you can tell when there's a mixture going on. And it really does speak to the quality of that object. you know, the way that object is, the way the paints may be illuminating off of the canvas or off of the fabric, right? The way maybe those inks look, they just have a depth and a quality to them that maybe others don't. And so I've always said that those of you who have followed me for a long time on the gel plate, you know, I've always said the gel plate likes high-low. It doesn't like all Golden's paints, and it doesn't like all, you know, craft paints. But when you mix them, when you mix these paints together, there's something really magical that happens the way not only the paints will pull off the plate. Like in order to get my old wall technique, you have to use different paints with different viscosities and different formulations, because it's something about that that really makes that sort of old wall layered plastered pull off look. It almost looks like some of them are going to peel away and what have you, because it's the difference in materials interacting. So like my old wall technique that many of you are familiar with, it's really about the alchemy of materials. It's an excellent example of alchemy. And for those of you who have really mastered it, you'll know it's like all those paints coming together. And when it's just sort of all it pulling off the plate at the same time, it just doesn't look the same. So that's a really good example of alchemy of materials. And so this week, I invite you to really go in and do a few things. Really play around with maybe paints and materials and inks and stuff that you haven't used in a long time, or maybe you've never thought about using them together. Just have playtime. We're not trying to make anything in particular. We're just seeing how these materials alchemize. How do they look? How are things coming together? And maybe treat yourself to that one material that you've been saying, it's a little bit too much, but I love it. You know, maybe for months you've just been craving to have it. Treat yourself to it. You know, maybe it's a spice or something in the kitchen that you have to order and it comes from Morocco, somewhere like that. I love the Berber. It's like a masala. It's like all these different flavors together. And my mother made it one time a long time ago, and she had to buy all these different spices, and it was so good. And she hasn't made it since, and it's hard to find it, but I've been looking for it. And when I do, I'm gonna purchase it because I know it's worth it. So, you know, we always have those things kind of like on our checklist of things to get or do, but maybe just treat yourself to that one special thing that you feel will alchemize that thing that you're most passionate about. Maybe it's in and around your home, your kitchen, your garden, you know. Maybe it's that special rose bush that you've just been wanting so bad, but you're like, golly, I don't want to spend $120 on that rose bush. But you know you have the perfect spot for it, and if you got it, it would change your garden. And anyway, it would change how you feel about even your interaction with gardening, because it's been something you've really wanted, and now you've allowed yourself to fulfill that want, and you get to enjoy having it. And not only that, but you know it's going to be that thing that's going to alchemize your garden. It's going to make your garden, you know, just kind of evolve in a whole different kind of way. So I'll stop there, but I'm hoping that I've kind of opened your thinking a little bit more to the way alchemy happens with materials. And so spending a little bit more time thinking about, or even noticing how things alchemize when you use certain things together, how it just is completely different. And it's really paying attention. And I know as a creative myself, I really pay attention to how things alchemize, and how I get different techniques and how I get things to look a particular kind of way, by just bringing these certain materials together and noticing every time I use this, I get this effect. You know what I mean? It's definitely worth noting. So, pause 32, the alchemy of materials. Please enjoy your week, enjoy time thinking about it, and in your pauses, you know, have your journal next to you, and you know, like you might be doing something else and it'll pop up in your mind. That's right, when I've done this, this, and that, wow, it was a really special combination. Let me write that down and remember it. It's so funny how the mind is, when we give it a task, like, help me remember how I've alchemized materials in the past, things I really, really like. It'll go into those file drawers of the mind. It'll start dusting things off, and out of nowhere it'll pop up while you're doing, least expected, you're doing something else. We all know what that's like. And you'll remember it. You know, take the time to write it down. So as I sit here on vacation, I'm in San Diego with the grands at the beach. They love the water. I love the water. And I was able to spend a lot of time yesterday sitting out at the water, meditating, and just really seeing the direction that my life is kind of, you know, curving into as I've spent time with these pauses. Is really allowing me to think deeply and to also begin to move in some directions that I've been wanting to move in, and to continue to evolve and to grow as a person. And hopefully you guys will continue to evolve and grow with me, and we can go on some new and amazing journeys together. Don't forget my kit. So my first two kits with Schiffer Publishing come out October 1st. Many of you have already gotten them. You still have time to, I'll leave some links below. Go over to the website. If you purchase them, send me an email showing that, you know, that your receipt, and it will enter you into a free workshop that I'm going to be doing. It's going to be free to everyone who gets in before October 1st by purchasing the kits. Afterwards, you'll still be able to get in, but it'll be a fee based. So you still have time to get it for free and get the kit. So it's a great deal. And we will be doing, just to catch everyone up that's been doing this, I'm planning towards the end of October to put that, to let everybody know about that workshop. I just want everybody to get in, get the October 1st deadline before I actually then give the dates for when we're going to be doing that workshop. But it's going to come up in October. Don't worry. We're going to all get in there and have a great time working on some new collage techniques that I've been working on, and working with the stamps and the stencils. Alrighty. Love you guys. Have a great week. Alchemy of Materials, Pause 32. Let's have at it. Take care. Love you guys.